Hello, good evening, Oral Gibbes, and welcome to Oral Gibbes Live. And with me this evening, I have the president of the Independence for St. Martin Foundation. Mr. Lake, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, good evening to your listeners, Oral, and it's my pleasure to be on your program.
Well, it's good to have you in the program this evening. I know you've authored many books. In fact, this is one here, The Republic of St. Martin. Yeah. How many so far you've?
So far I've done 3 books, really. The Republic of St. Martin, yeah. Friendly Anger, which is the history of the labor movement, and 649, which is a 21st century explanation of the problems that we have on this island and a comparison between the collectivité of St. Martin and the country St. Martin, which is basically the 2 sections of the island.
You have any favorite among the books?
You know, you write them, you don't have no favorite, but I believe for these times, especially for these times, 649 is really appropriate, especially when you look at the fact, for instance, just today in the papers it appeared once more that the French government or the French judicial system denied the collectivity of St. Martin the 100 million euros which they were entitled to. If you read 649, you'll see that we had mentioned that, and they had only give them 40 million. At that time, the Dutch government had also promised St. Martin, you know, the southern side here, 180 million, and they only give 60. So each side gives something like 1/3 of what they had promised. And in the 649, you have all of these facts also concerning the crime situation, the economic situation, the business situation, all of which are not in the interest of our people. So at this moment in history and time, if you ask me one of the 3 books that people should, that I believe that all St. Martiners should read, then it's 649.
You know, it's quite interesting what you mentioned there, because it seems like these 2 European nations are coordinating their efforts against St. Martin. And we here, we're not doing anything. I had MP Daniel Gibbes here, and he's been always preaching we have to cooperate more.
Definitely. These people have been cooperating. If you go back from in the 14 or 1500s, they've been cooperating to keep us in line. And we, like you said, in the past, our people, as families, we have cooperated because we have intermarried. But as far as really doing what we should do united in order to progress even further than we are at this moment. And right now, we are in such a stage in our history that if we don't cooperate as much as possible, and realize that we are a family, you know, we are definitely going to find ourselves in some more serious problems that we are in right now, because right now, if you look at it, economically, we are at the bottom of the ladder. Psychologically, we are at the bottom of the ladder. Socially, we are at the bottom of the ladder. Yeah. Financially, you know, in every judiciary, in every sense of the word, all the pillars, all the main pillars, really, we don't control on neither side of the island. And that means to say that things are definitely getting worse for us than even in any sense better. So we are in some serious problems. And we have to cooperate. While these 2 European powers, they have a program and they're carrying out their program.
But if you look at both sides of the island, you have one side which there's more autonomy. The other side is really part of the Republic, and some are saying maybe they should have overseas territory status, in that will make them similar to what, say, Dutch St. Martin have right now in terms of autonomy.
You know, I think it's a myth in many ways that we believe that we have more autonomy. And just Monday, they had these 2 Dutch professors give a lecture on the political system, on the electoral system. And you run into a very interesting observation, and that was that all changes that could have been made, even in the interest of St. Martin, one way or the other, all these changes basically can only be made if the Dutch government in The Hague agrees to these changes. And you found out that they don't agree to none of these changes. For instance, a political system have to be organized and set up in a way that corresponds with the culture of the people. Now, we all in St. Martin know, for instance, that in our culture, the biggest vote getters normally considered the leader of the country, the leader of the island. He or she is supposed to take the key positions. But the system that we have now, if we try to change it and say that we will have elections for the prime minister who's supposed to be the leader of government, you will find that this cannot take place because the people in The Hague will not agree to it. So since they will not agree that we in St. Martin could elect our prime minister directly in order to balance our parliament, end result is it cannot take place. And so when you go down the line of almost all the major decisions, or at times even minor decisions, you find that suddenly The Hague doesn't agree with it, and if The Hague doesn't agree with it, then it cannot take place. Now, as far as Paris is concerned, Paris just dictates one time. So The Hague gives you the impression that you can make a decision, but when it gets up to them, they find one way or the other to deny it, whereas in Paris they will tell you straight from the very beginning, no, it can't be done, forget about that. You can't handle these type of things. And therefore you see that in the final analysis, they're both cooperating with each other in their interest and not in our interest. But then they give us the impression as a divide and rule again, that this side you have more autonomy than this side, or this side you have more benefits than the other side. But in reality, there are no additional benefits, but that both sides, both administrations are working in their interest. Yeah. And they're really doing the things that are benefiting them and not in any way benefiting us.
Could it be also that all political leaders over the last years have also been playing a game in a way that it's convenient for them that things stay the way that it is?
Well, we know that for the over the years, like you said, it has been very easy to say, as a political leader or leadership, or political establishment, right, for lack of a better word, that it's easy to put the blame on someone else. It was, I would like to do this, but first it was Willemstad that will stop you. You know, we come to get permission from Willemstad. Or, you know, I would like to do it, but now it's The Hague. So it's never me. It's never me. It's always somebody else. This works perfect for them. And therefore, for many of them, it's in their interest to keep this system the way it is, because it works for them. But it doesn't work for we, the people of St. Martin, both sides, but it works for the political establishment. And therefore, the political establishment will try to maintain that system, whereas you could pass the buck on all the time. First, we used to pass the buck on to Willemstad. Everything was, the fault was like Curaçao. Now, in many ways, the fault is The Hague. So the fault hasn't reached home to us in Great Bay yet, you know, as far as the political establishment is concerned. So therefore, this system benefits them. It doesn't benefit us, the people of this island, because if it benefited us, we will be the owners of Front Street, for instance. We will be the educators. The full 90% of our teachers will be our own people, for instance, in the schools. Or our boy children will not have a 40% dropout rate. Our young men will not be filling the jails in both, whether it's in Great Bay or is Point Bastia in Guadeloupe, you know. And so you could go down the line, so we could see there's nobody who could come out really and argue that this system has been working in our benefit anymore, because we could see all the reality of it is right in your face. Just look at Front Street, or just look at your educational system, or just look at your judicial system, where you judge and condemn in a language that you don't even understand. Or know what. You know, you could go down the line. So those who might want to pretend that we have been benefiting from this system are really fooling themselves. We can't even say who could enter this land. We can't even give visas for who could enter this land or who cannot enter that. All of that is determined in The Hague and Paris.
But what you said to those that will say, well, you know what, there was a time in our history when you walked Front Street, it had belongs to St. Martin people. They own the property, they own the business, everything. And now when you walk Front Street, a lot of the business are no longer owned, or most are not owned by St. Martiners, and there's still property that's owned by St. Martin's. But when it comes to business, we no longer control.
You know, that's the same. There was a time when we owned this land. There was a time when we owned Front Street.
Right.
This has happened now because, again, to a great extent, what happened with the influx of the whole change, for the lack of the word, or the influx of the touristic economy as we went into big time in tourism, there wasn't, in many ways, there wasn't that vision of the leadership to say, if we're going to build a hotel, let us say of a 100-room hotel, and we need 5,000 people or 1,000 people to build this hotel, but we only have 300 people living on this island, and all 300 people of ours who living on this island are working and are happy, then why do we need another hotel for 1,000 rooms? We don't have the people, and we don't need it because our economy.
You said the growth was too fast?
So what happened was there was no connection between the growth of the economy and the growth of us as a people and our development. Because if there was that connection, you would say, no, we can't build this hotel because we don't need it. We don't need it because all our people are working. If all our people are working, there's only one way we could build another hotel. It means to say we got to bring in 1,000 people. Now, if you're bringing in 1,000 people, but our population is only 2,000, what happens when those 1,000 come in? That's going to be a clash of the cultures. Suddenly you're going to find that your culture is getting into a problem, and this is going to eventually lead to problems because it's 1/3 of new people coming in who has nothing to do with our way of life, and we didn't really need those jobs. You develop, if the approach was to develop your economy as your population grew, then that's a different approach. But if you're flooding the island in order to bring in certain economic benefits, and then you ask for who? Because if we all are working, then why are we creating new establishments? Unnecessary, which not only going to bring in funds for other people, but not because not for us, but it's also going to bring a cultural clash that is going to lead to drugs, addictions, and all the other type of things that we are now experiencing.
But what do you say in terms of when you look at St. Martin today, right? That today now we have a lot of our own people that are unemployed, and then we have thousands of people from other places that are employed.
Because of the same thing, what happened when you brought, let us say we needed to bring it to a basic problem, we needed 100 carpenters to do whatever specific job. But for a specific job, we needed 100 carpenters. But our people, we only had 10 carpenters. Then why would we do a project that needs 100 carpenters when we only had 10 carpenters? Because the other 90 carpenters that you're bringing in is going to eventually, after the work here, normally, at least 40% of them are going to stay on the island. And you're going to eventually have a clash of cultures because you really did not need them. It's like your belly is full and you're still trying to eat more food but you don't need it. So it's going to have a negative reaction. And now, take that over there. For the businessman, he didn't care because he wanted to get his project done as quick as possible. So bringing in foreign workers was fine for him because that way he could get cheap labor, he could build his project, and he could have his $1 million operation going and make his millions in profits. We, on the other hand, found out that this thing was destructive to us as a people because it wasn't structured in a sense that, okay, we have 20 new St. Martiners who are carpenters. Now, because we have 20 new St. Martiners, now we could build a hotel that needs 20 carpenters because we just produced them. You see, I was looking at a simple thing like a soccer game today, and they saw, I think it was against Germany and France won the game today. But that's not the point I want to bring. What I want to bring about 10 or 15 years ago, the German soccer league, the German soccer team was no longer winning games. So what they did then, they went on into a project in which they started to teach the young children from young, a whole project set up for 10 to 15 years to produce a new championship soccer team in 10 years, because they realize these things take time. You cannot have something done within 1 to 3. It took them 10 to 15 years to produce that team that won the World Cup in Brazil. People just saw, oh, yeah, Germany went and won. But it took them 10 to 15 years of production. If we had taken that same light, 10 to 15 years to produce engineers, carpenters, whatever we know, based on our population. Because when there was one statistic that showed that in the 1950s, and that's not so long, we only had about 1,000, 2,000 people on the island. Now we have 2,000 people on the island, 2,000, 3,000 people on the island. What are you doing by the late 50s building mega hotels that needed employees of 2,000 to 3,000? That was your whole population. Where that was a contradiction in there was a disconnect between the economic reality and the reality of the population. You only had about 1,000 people, 2,000, 3,000 people, but you were building projects that needed 10,000 people, so you had to bring in.
So you say that Molebé was a curse and a blessing at the same time?
You remember the people used to say Molebé was bigger than St. Martin, huh? Yeah. You know that because you work there.
I work, yeah.
But look at it today. I mean, St. Martin is still here and Molebé is gone. In fact, now, Molebé property, according to certain reports, are again being used not in the interest of St. Martin people, because they are, according to certain reports that we all have been hearing, that property, that land that we thought was just sitting there and nothing was being done with it, according to certain reports, that land was being used for speculative purposes, which again we as a people hasn't benefited anything from. But there are people out there in this world who are benefiting big time from this whole property sitting right there the way it is, you know. So again, when we look at not only at Molebé, but at all the others, and we start to ask ourselves some hard questions. Yeah. Look at our population. Did we need these major projects, or could they have been done more gradually? Because if they had been done gradually as your population grew, then we wouldn't have a lot of the thing, because we will know for a population of 10,000, you need maybe one mega hotel. For a population of 40,000, you need 3. But when you take a population of 5,000 and you put on 4, then you have to bring in people to work those 4, right. And then you will also be bringing in all the other problems that come to it.
But you think that what you described there are people who will say, well, you know, you're stifling growth, you're not letting the economy grow, and there are people who feel like that.
How can you? The economy is supposed to, like everything else, benefit first and foremost the people of St. Martin. If the economy is not benefiting the people of St. Martin first and foremost, then the economy is not doing what it's supposed to do.
Do you think that's happening now?
If the economy is benefiting the people, I don't think the economy is, because when you have 25 to 30% unemployment amongst your young people, when you have it that 3/4 of our households, 3/4, make between 1,000 to 3,000 guilders a month. 1,000 to 3,000. A household is basically a father, mother, and 2 children. So you're saying 4 people are making between 1,000, some of them are making 1,000, that's 250 guilders, or 3,000, which is 750 guilders a month.
How are they surviving?
How are they surviving? And then on top of that, you see that the GDP of St. Martin, though, is at $28,000 US, and these people making kids. So then you have a massive poverty on this island that is running, that according to these studies, 60 to 70% of this population on this island are living in poverty. You know, it's frightening. So then, and in that 60 or 70%, when we go back and we see 25 to 30% of our young people are unemployed, and we see then, and we look at the reality of the jails, and so many of our young people sitting in those institutions, then you say this economy is not benefiting our people the way our people should benefit. And if you look at Again, we could talk, if we talk in faith and honest to our people, look at Front Street. How many of our people own multi-million-dollar jewelry stores on Front Street? How many of our people own, after 60 to 70 years
But we couldn't compete.
of tourism on this island, for instance, we still don't have any one of our people that owns a major hotel of over 100 rooms. We don't have any of our people that own any of these institutions.
But if you look at, take for example, Front Street, you can see where people came in from other parts of the world, and they brought in their own people. They were paid $100, $200, way below the minimum wage, while local investors, local business people had to stay within the minimum wage. So it was unfair competition. There was no level playing field.
Of course not. That's where we're coming back to. So when we talk about the business community or the economy benefiting our people, if our people don't, if Front Street is the face of St. Martin, and our people don't live, work, and own businesses on Front Street, then the face, you're not seeing the face of St. Martin. And for us to then allow for others to be able to come in here and make this amount of money because of certain situation, then what you need to do in any part of the world is you have to bring around change. One of the key changes has to be, and business people want to make profit. They want to make money. That's their thing. But any good businessman is always want to have he will choose what he considered the cheapest cost, especially when it comes to labor.
Right.
So therefore, if our governments or our political leaders decide, for whatever reason, that if you're going to hire, even if it could be anyone, to do a job that a St. Martiner could do, then you have to be prepared to pay that person twice as much. So if you could get to hire St. Martiner for $1,500, and for whatever reason you insist that you want to bring in somebody from around the world to do that identical job which this St. Martiner could do for $1,500, then you have to be prepared to pay $3,000. Automatically, this is what the businessmen will do. They will go out and they will get St. Martin and they will train them, because from a strictly business point of view, it's cheaper for them to then hire the same. But if it continues to be so that it's cheaper to hire an outside workforce than a St. Martin workforce, then you will always have that they will hire the outside workforce. So as a governmental organization, then you're knowing just the law of supply and demand, and a business person will always want to make a profit, then you as a government reverse it and decide, well, from now on, if you want to hire someone to do a job that our people could do, then you're going to have to pay that person twice as much. And automatically these business people are going to then start going out and training St. Martiners to do those jobs because it can cost them less. Business people deal with profit and loss. And to them to maximize their profit, they have to cut their expenses as much as possible. These are just logical, general rules of business that once you know them and you put them in place, this is what is going to happen.
How you feel about, and I'm going to get still the independence, how you feel about education? Because so many of our young people, they are not really doing so well these days. Many of them go to school. It's difficult for them to get to go on to higher education. So many of them go on to Europe, to the Netherlands, and they return because they're frustrated. And then people will say, that all people are dumb. And I say, no, all people are not dumb. Many of our youngsters who go to Holland and they give up and fail is because of the system that's there. I think you got to be extremely strong as a young person. You got to have really good backing from your family to survive there. It's not easy.
Definitely. I've been very, very concerned about the educational system, because education is one of the key elements to push a society forward, to make a people be, especially to compete in this modern world. You have to have the best education possible. I agree with you 100%. Our people are super bright people. Everywhere they go in the world, and you give them an equal opportunity chance,
Yeah.
you see the rise right to the top of the thing. But our educational system, as far as I'm concerned, is not set up for us to succeed. In my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, the education system is set up for us to fail. And when you have 40% of your boy children not finishing high school, who go on to become, then there's nothing wrong with those kids, huh?
No.
There's something wrong with the system of education, and then you need a revolution in education. And because our whole educational system is based out to a great extent on the pyramid approach of just one, and you know the pyramid approach where you drop out all the others, and not really a democratic approach. It's a pyramid, so you got to get rid of, you keep dropping them out all along the line, and then you say, for whatever reason, that they can't study, or you make it so impossible for them.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, we don't have to reform our education system, because reform means that we're saying that our education is basically good and we just have to tweak it here and there. As far as I'm concerned, we need a revolution in education. We need to we have to find out, first, one of the things, when we have only 10 or 15% of those teachers in schools teaching are made up, St. Martin's make up only 15, somewhere between
Very
15 and
small number.
17%, and the majority of them again are women.
Yeah.
So what about the boys? And you see right away reflecting the boy children, they drop out. Right? And nothing wrong with the women teachers. We're grateful for them.
But we need men in
But
there.
we need men in there. So, and if only 10 to 15% of all the teachers are St. Martiners, then who do these children identify with? Who really understands the culture of these people, or the tactics, how to really teach these children? This responsibility have to lie on the shoulders of our teachers, but we don't have our teachers. And then what are we doing to revolutionize this educational system, change it up and make it in such a way that we teach creativity and not rotation, the rotation approach of 1 and 1 is automatically 2, but you don't understand why it is 2. And you go down the line on those type of things. We're not even going into the section yet of the language of instruction, you know, where all over the world the experts them say you have to be taught in your own language in order for children to achieve as high as possible their goals. So we have a major problem in our education, and this reflects automatically in the labor force. Because if you don't have the educated people, who then going to become the managers and the owners of businesses? You have to educate them in order to make them managers, in order to make them supervisors, in order to make them owners of businesses and things. So you see the connection. If the educational system is no good, then also your labor situation is going to be a disaster.
I was speaking to someone a few months ago, and they told me that we have many St. Martiners here back on the island with advanced degrees. There's a master's in marketing, master's in hospitality, and they can't find a job in the land of plenty. We are the leaders of tourism in the Caribbean, and you're going to tell me that we invested millions of guilders and dollars in our people to go to the U.S. mainly, study in the hospitality field and marketing, and they're back home and they can't get a job.
This is again one of the things that we, if you read again 6 for 9, you remember I spoke about the gate of no return, where our best and our brightest, they leave Juliana, the gate of no return, and we send them off with this big fanfare, and they study, and many of them again are success. They succeed, masters, PhD, but they don't return. Why? And those that return can't get a job, so they're frustrated till they have to leave again. You know, and therefore that is something that we definitely have to deal with, and we have to, because there is without an educated population. In fact, every PhD or every master's, there's studies that show for every master that you have or a PhD, these pulls along with them 5 or 6 or up to 10 people with lesser degrees because of the connection of what they have to do, and then they pull along in business factors. Others come along and benefit. So when you have somebody with these degrees, and when you give them a job, you're not only giving them a job, you're giving others a job too, because others now will get an opportunity, because they will open up certain doors that others will also fill.
Yeah.
You see, so therefore, it's vital, it's of utmost importance that these people, these young people that we have, that all of them get jobs, and there are jobs on the islands for them. But it's just, again, there are times when you have to make concentrated effort. If you are in trouble, just like if you are in certain problems, then you have to make concentrated efforts to cure these situations.
You recently met with the Parliament of St. Martin.
Yeah, we met with Parliament in order we requested them to look into two aspects, two very important aspects as far as we are concerned. One was a call for a referendum, in which a referendum based on independence, whether the people of St. Martin would like to, vote for independence. And this call came after 16 years since the last referendum, because the last referendum was in the year 2000. And the other one was in order to a request for them to look into the possibility of getting St. Martin back on the Decolonization Committee of the United Nations.
Okay, and so I think there was supposed to be a second meeting.
Yes, there was supposed to be a second meeting, which we requested, which the President of Parliament told us she was going to call. She hasn't convened it yet. We have sent them a second letter. We have sent them a letter request reminding them that they promised us a second meeting, and so we haven't gotten a reply yet from them on that specific request, that we have a second meeting with them to consider to continue. But I must say that the first meeting was very positive. In fact, there were 11 parliamentarians there in that meeting. 10 of them publicly stated that they were supporters of independence. One, they basically took the position that the only way forward, the natural way forward, was independence, but did not really decide or said publicly that that person was also for independence. But they said the natural way forward was independence. So if you look at the 10, and then you will say that's a 2/3 majority that wants independence. And that is very important, because especially for the request for a referendum, because Parliament can call a referendum. That's one of the few things that Parliament could do without having to get consent from The Hague. So as this election time is around, they can still call a referendum with the election. So for instance, they could have the election and the referendum in one ballot, on one ballot. Yeah. Yes, it's still possible. So people will be able to vote for whoever they want, or whichever political party they would like, and still vote whether they want for independence. And that then will bring forward one time, you'll get...
It will be cheaper too.
It will be cheaper, and the nation will be able to indicate to whoever is elected, listen, we want to go for independence, and that means to say it will be clear-cut, and the political parties or the politicians that openly support independence, people will also get an opportunity to realize that since these are the ones that openly support independence, then these should form the new governments and look and start to work towards independence.
But Mr. You really think politicians will do that at this time?
Well, let me put it this way. I knew the time when they would tell me things like, something, we support independence, but we can't publicly go out and say that, because that would cost us votes. Today, they are publicly saying, many of them, that they are for independence. At that meeting, 10 of them publicly stated that they were for independence. So if we could get them on, if they could come forward in this first, as the election comes forward, also Parliament officially calls for a referendum. And if we could have a referendum with the election, which is perfect timing, cheaper, possible, they don't have to ask nobody consent, they don't have to go to The Hague to call a referendum, and then have the election where the people could vote for whoever they want and also vote for independence. It will be a giant step forward, and for the island and for us as a people, and it will give us a direction. Now, whether they will do it You know, that's something that I cannot answer because I'm not a politician. From that perspective, I believe in independence. You know, so I'm not a member of any partisan political party. But my whole direction is definitely for independence, which is also a direction that I believe we as a people should go. So if they want to do something, they have a golden opportunity now to call the election and call a referendum at the same time, which, like you pointed out so clearly, will be cheaper, and it's possible. That's what is very important. There's no excuse to say that it's not possible or that it's too late. It's not too late. It's possible, and it's one of the few things they could do without having to ask the Hague's consent. So even there, they will be showing that they are strong enough or that they are independent-minded enough to do something without asking the Hague's consent.
Do you think that that second meeting will be held within the next month?
Well, we are hoping they kept the first, and the President of Parliament promised that she will continue that first meeting, because not a second meeting, it's a continuation of the first meeting. She promised, and I have no reason to doubt her word that she's going to call the meeting.
Now, some are saying that the request to place St. Martin back on the United Nations Decolonization Committee is a step backwards.
Yeah, we have heard that argument that is a step backward. I don't see it as a step backward because it's a fact that we are a colony, and it's a fact that if we request to be put on the Decolonization Committee, which is one of our rights as a colony, because we don't rule ourselves, this will also give us more international exposure to the fact that we are colonies and that we want to become independent. So to say that it's a step backward is to also indicate that you are implying that we as a St. Martin people has no right to go to the United Nations or to go to the international community to defend our rights and things. I believe that we have the right to go to any international organization, whether it's to the United Nations, whether to the Organization of American States, whether to wherever, to bring our request forward that we would like to become an independent people and that we are working towards this and making the world aware of this. And that's our right as a people.
But there are some politicians, St. Martin had that opportunity in 2000, June 24th, I think it was, 2000. The year 2000, June 24th, right? And the referendum, and they voted for the status that's now in existence, separate status. So it's by choice, they're saying. It's no longer like before that time you had...
No, they're completely wrong, because the right of self-determination, you could exercise it. You have a request to exercise as many times as you wish, because we haven't acquired that right yet. We don't determine for ourselves.
So it doesn't matter that it was a referendum in June?
No, because remember we had two referendums. We had one in '94.
Right.
That was the first referendum when the people voted for a restructured Netherlands entity. Then we had a second referendum in 6 years after. Just 6 years after. That's when they voted for what they call separate status. In that second referendum, the separate status that we got now, for instance, was never approved by the people. Yes, the people voted for separate status, but when they put the package together, when they put a constitution together, they never brought it back to the people of St. Martin and say, do you like this? Do you want any changes?
That was one of your biggest arguments.
Yes, this is what I always argue. So therefore, in many ways, that what we have now was never sanctioned by the people. They cannot say the people voted and approved this. It was never approved. A constitution was put together, Parliament, they said it was passed in Parliament, but constitutions in this modern world today, we just saw in England, people take these vital decisions by all the people of the land in a referendum. That's when you go to the people and you say, this thing is so important that 10 or 15 of us cannot decide this thing. We will want all of us to decide it, because if it goes good, all of us benefit. If it goes bad, and the country, you see, people seem to must always remember that the country and the government belongs to the people, and that the parliament is the representatives of the people, but parliament is not the people. The highest body is the people, and not parliament. Parliament is there to give advice, to call referendums, for instance, and said whatever the people decide, that is what we will do, not the opposite way around. 5 or 6 or 10 politicians cannot write a constitution for a modern-day St. Martin. Maybe, I don't believe it was ever entitled to write it, but especially now in our modern day, with all our educated people and things, when you write a constitution, you have to take it to the people and let the people decide whether this is what. And the last referendum was 16 years ago. So we have all rights for a referendum, and especially now that it could be done so easily, you know. Therefore, bring it to the people and let the people decide what they want.
That's quite interesting. When you look at what happened just recently in Europe, where Britain withdrew from the European Union, voted, the majority of those voting in favor of getting out were more older people. In St. Martin now, you have more younger people wanting independence.
Yes. Again, you see how dynamic our society is, because there's a very important thing. The young people are often, in England, you had that to a great extent too, that the younger people, a lot of them was also for staying in the European Union, because the education, the whole approach to education was different than the older folks. And what people seem to forget in the English thing, England is an island. It's not tied to the European, to the landmass, the European landmass. And island people are always in many ways much more independent-minded. You know, someone said something, I heard an English person explaining it, and he said, listen, because they're saying, many people are predicting gloom and doom now to England. He said, this is not, that decision which they made now is no different to when England made a decision in 1940 to stand alone against Nazi Germany. Remember, Nazi Germany had conquered all of the rest. England was the only, they could have compromised. They could have made a deal with Nazi, but because of their conviction and their culture, they stood alone. As a people, they are accustomed making decisions which they believe is in their personal best interest. And that's what every nation is supposed to do. That's what St. Martin is also supposed to do. Make the decisions that are in the interest of St. Martin first and foremost.
But you know what I noticed leading up to that referendum is that a lot of people got involved. The U.S. government got involved. Huge corporations got involved, tried to convince the British people it was the wrong thing to do. The day after, everyone was preaching gloom and doom. And I see the same thing here in the Caribbean, here in St. Martin. If you're speaking about political independence, they're telling you all the nightmare stories that are possible. They're never giving you any of the positive aspects of independence.
And you know, I told someone the same thing. They said, the gloom and doom story. I said, there's one thing we know for sure, and Einstein said it. If you do something over and over and you expect to get different results, then you're crazy. For 500 years or more, what has happened? We have been ruled by another people for 500 years. And we know what we have gotten in these 500 years. We are still the hewers of wood and the carriers of water. We're still the last to be hired and the first to be fired. That has happened for the last 500 years. And we know this will continue for the next 500 years if we allow ourselves to continue to be ruled by another people. That is for sure. That we know. That is a fact. Yeah. On the other hand, if we decide to take our responsibility and to place our destiny in our own hands, we also know that we have always succeeded when we have done things for ourselves. No matter how difficult it might appear before we start, but once we start, we always finishes it. So we know if we change, if we do for ourselves what we have always succeeded in, then there's a fact that we will succeed. But if we continue to expect other people to do for us, for 500 years they have not done anything for us, what makes you think that for the next 500 years? Like some people say, oh, we need more time. More time for what? For 500 years we've been waiting. Are we going to wait for another 500 years? And these are questions that if you truly believe in self-reliance, and if you truly believe in St. Martin people, you have absolutely no doubt that we will succeed and we will have a brighter future once we take our own destiny into our own hands. It's just logical.
Let me take a call from Ms. Laker. Oral Gibbes Live, you're on caller. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you're on live, caller.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is go independent, and the politician is reeling and dealing. Who are we going to come going to Mr. Lake? Good night.
Good night. So when you go independence and the politicians are wheeling and dealing, what are you going to do?
The first thing you have to realize that the country belongs to us, not to the politicians. The country belongs to you and me and everybody. And therefore the politicians work for us. If you as the boss and your worker is not doing what you have, what is supposed to do, then you as the boss supposed to fire that person. Likewise, if our politicians are wheeling and dealing and we don't like what we do, what they're doing, then we fire them. How do you fire them? You have elections. You replace them with others. So therefore, we have to see that the self-reliance, that the country is ours, not the politicians. Like I said earlier, the politicians are our representatives. They represent us. They are not us. They represent us, and we are the bosses, and we give them the instruction. And if they don't carry out what we want to do, we fire them. And how do you fire them? You hold elections, and you vote in other people.
I met a young man who told me this week that he hated me when he was younger. And the reason why he hated me is because he had to sit and watch my program with his parents when he didn't want to. He went away to study, came back, and is now working and everything else. And he's working, have a good job. And he said, you know what? Now I love your show. And a lot of other young people like it. They don't call, but they're watching it. What I mean here now is looking back at independence for St. Martin, 20 years ago, very few people ever want to think about it. Today now, I'm sure you hold a poll, some 35% of the population want it.
I believe that if we hold the referendum now, I believe independence will win. If what we heard publicly stated by the people's representative, 10 of the 15, 2/3, said they were for independence and that they will, some of them said they voted for, and 1 or 2 said that they didn't vote for it the last time, but this time they will vote for it. You see, and when you go out into the community, because of the clash of the cultures, now there's no longer Curacao as a buffer between St. Martin and The Hague. It's now either you're for St. Martin or you're not for St. Martin. It's not that it's not that you either for St. Martin or you either for The Hague. No, The Hague is not for St. Martin. So if you're for St. Martin, you cannot be for The Hague. So either you're for St. Martin or you're against St. Martin. And the overwhelming majority of people on this island are for St. Martin. So therefore, independence, which represents for St. Martin, by St. Martin, for St. Martiners, there is no way that should we hold this referendum now, that independence can lose. There's absolutely no, I cannot see that.
What's amazing is to see how young people feel. And here you have a huge group of St. Martiners that are unemployed, but they still believe that independence is the way to go.
Because as young people, always the young are the ones that make the changes. Throughout the history of mankind, you remember the 60s, the radical movement, the Black Panthers, Malcolm when he was young, right. Martin Luther King when he was young. There always is young people that brings about the change. Because the older people, for whatever reason, they get tired, they get disillusioned. But when you're young, you're enthusiastic, and you could see, you look at life in a different way, and you see the future. Whereas and many people, as they get older, they see the past. All they talk about is the past, while the youth talk about the future.
They'll call if you're there. Oral Gibbes live, your call. Hello? You're on live call.
Good night.
Good night, sir.
To you and your guest.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Several things that he's saying is correct. But the fact is, we have a parliament that do not truly try to educate our people. And the other thing is, neither do they stand up for our people. They assemble, they go to parliament, and they pass laws for the most not in representation of the people or by the people. And take, for example, there are islands in the Caribbean that are not economically as strong as us. And they are not giving their people generic medicine. I don't care what they say or what they want to say, whether it's a shadow under the medicine, this nonsense is saying. That is to justify their doing it and they're giving it because Holland is sanctioning it. But that is wrong. Definitely wrong. It is making a lot of people sick, and because a majority of persons want to justify it by saying it is more economically feasible, so what? Where are our parliamentarians?
I only have 1 minute remaining,
Yes, I have only but 1 minute.
I'm sorry.
Our parliamentarians, but I'm going to say plain. It might not happen now, it would not happen no. He has a point, but our parliamentarians are not listening to the people, and it would be even a worse matter when some of those crooks get in power again. Thank you.
Okay, good night. Mr. Mayor.
Let me say this. I believe nothing is too good for St. Martin people. And therefore, we have to have the best medical attention possible. We have to have the best educational system, especially health and education. Those are two pillars of our society that, if you have a sick people, you're not going nowhere. If you have uneducated people, you're not going nowhere. So we have to be uncompromising in that. I completely agree with him that I don't want people to tell me anything about when it comes to educating my children, that the children of St. Martin, that it's too expensive. It cannot be too expensive to educate. I don't care how much it is. Then let us put the money and find the money one way and educate our children. Likewise with the health, especially our elders. We can't see these people who have carried this nation for all these years. Now that they're old, it's too expensive to give them the rightful retirement that they deserve. So these type of social benefits, I mean, we should never be compromising on those type of things. And in closing, like you said, I would like to again emphasize that for the upcoming election, that Parliament should look into the possibility, in fact, call a referendum with the elections, because then people will vote only twice. They could vote twice, once for whoever they want to vote for, and once for this issue of independence. So we could get that solved once and for all and move the nation forward and prepare the nation then to go independent from our youngest baby that just born today to the oldest person who might be 100 years or more.
Mr. Lake, I want to thank you for coming in. I hope that follow-up meeting of Parliament takes place very soon and that you were able to bring that across to them too.
Thank you, Oral, and it's my pleasure. And I'd like to say good night to your listeners, and definitely be looking forward for this meeting with our parliamentarians to once again emphasize to them and request them that they make the referendum issue, place it on the ballot, because it's possible, it can be done, and it's not too late.
All right. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that's it for now. See you next time. Until then, good night. Take care. Bye.